Hey there, it is Tuesday afternoon and welcome to the Maple Minds podcast. My name is Christy. That's not Rob. That is Francis, who is hosting with us today instead of Rob as he's out traveling with his family. Francis is a friend of the show. It's not her first appearance on the Maple Minds show. And I've been looking forward to this all week. I love trading opinions with you. I really do.
Hi, Jane.
So I tried to keep the number of topics to a minimum because I want to extract as much of your opinion as I can and sort of bounce some of mine off you and see what you think. So let's get right into it. Let's start with Tumbler Ridge, because the reason that we didn't have a show last Friday as we normally would is because the vigil was being held in Tumbler Ridge. It was being attended by all of the political leaders. And that was really a moment for everybody to be paying attention to honoring the victims. We thought it was the right thing to do to skip last week, as we had talked about. So I'd like to start with that. What do you think about the reaction? What do you think about the leaders and how they showed up in the moment? Where do you want to start?
Sure. Well, for me, it started hearing it the night before. I got a text quite late from my closest relative saying, "Oh my God, did you hear that 10 people were killed in that school?" And I hadn't. And I thought, oh my God. And then the next morning I saw that Prime Minister Carney was interviewed in the House of Commons. He got quite emotional, which is understandable. He canceled his trip to the security conference, and his announcement about the defense strategy that he announced today, totally appropriate. And then when the leaders got into the House and each made their speech, it makes me really emotional. I thought it was fantastic. It was a real sense of really unifying for Canada. It was compassionate. It spoke to the significance of what happened. And for those families, I don't know if there's any comfort in any of this, but it for me is just a Canadian and feeling so awful for my fellow human beings here. It still makes me emotional, obviously, and I don't usually get like that. But anyhow, I thought the political speeches were excellent from everybody, all of the leaders. I loved Elizabeth May. I thought she was so moving as well. And then when they went to Tumbler Ridge and they, laid the flowers, and then I watched the vigil last week. And when the Indigenous elder said he wanted to do a prayer and could everybody hold hands, I wondered if the leaders would hold hands, because I wasn't sure where they were standing. And then they showed them doing that, and I thought it was really moving, and it was nice, and it was fitting for that horrendous tragic occasion. So I thought it showed Canadian leaders well. I thought Carney did absolutely the right thing to invite the other leaders with him, and again to cancel his conference and put the flags at half-mast and all of that. I thought David Eby did a really good job. His speeches were excellent. His message was really on point. He was also with the other leaders of the provincial parties, with the exception of the god-awful one BC.
Because they're not a party anymore.
They're not a party, and they didn't deserve to be there with the way they were tweeting. Anyhow, that's another conversation. This was a positive show of solidarity, I think, and it was really Canadiana on some level for something that is not normal in Canada or not typical in Canada, and that was an unbelievable tragedy. So, and again, it struck me as well that it was a fleeting moment, because we're not going to see Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre holding hands physically or literally or figuratively, probably again. But in the moment, I thought it was absolutely wonderful. And it made me feel, proud to be, I'm always proud to be Canadian, but it made me feel very viscerally proud to be Canadian. And that that Mark Carney and the others, most of the others, are really good people. And that's what we need leading us. So.
I loved all of that. Here's my thoughts. Like I said, I agree with all of that, especially the part where it's fleeting. I think that most of us who were taking a lot of Canadian pride in that moment, and I did too, it made me very proud to be Canadian, to see that. I'll argue with anybody, you're never going to see that in the States. You're not. And I think that the fact that you wouldn't see it in the States, the way that the American politicians handle it is somewhat of a dehumanizing approach. You know, they only show compassion and empathy when it's somebody from their own team. I think this is demonstrated in Trump's reaction to when those lawmakers in Minnesota, you know, were killed.
Yeah.
I think that over the past, let's say, 4 years of Pierre Poilievre campaigning and telling us all that he was going to be the next prime minister and all the reasons why the guy who was the prime minister was doing a shitty job. I think that any time before last week or whatever, if you would have asked me, is that possible? Are you going to see Pierre Poilievre hugging Elizabeth May? Are you going to see Pierre Poilievre holding hands with Mark Carney? I don't believe I would have believed that it was possible. So I think that it's important that even though we recognize that it was a moment and it wasn't a moment that was meant to last, these guys are going to go back to ripping each other and telling Canadians what a shitty job the other guy's doing. I think that the bigger message is that it was possible. It was possible by everybody, absolutely everybody, without hesitation, was putting their hand in for the team thing, right? Team Canada, not my team versus your team. So I think that was very important. And when you say that it had a Canadian approach to a situation that is very uncommon in Canada, I think that you're right. I think it did feel more Canadian. It felt more polite. It felt more empathetic. Yes. And it felt more human. Like I said, the way that the Americans handle these things feels very dehumanizing. And I'm pretty sure that that's the intent. I talk about that all the time. But this especially, and I have to give it to Pierre Poilievre. I do. I rip that guy, man. I have a playlist of my criticisms of that guy with, I don't know, over 60 videos. But I will give credit to where credit is due. And when he, not only his first initial address, that was very good.
Yes, it was.
But when he spoke at Tumbler Ridge too, I loved that. I can't watch that poem. I can't watch him read that poem and not cry. I can't do it. And this is from a guy that I despise, but he touched me in that moment, and I really got, and I think everybody got, when he talked about everybody who's ever been in charge of a kid, the minute you lose sight of them and that panic comes in, and talking about, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think that was probably one of the most effective ways to paint a picture to millions of people who have no idea what this feels like. We just know it's bad. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's what I think.
I agree with you. And as you know, I have a whole account dedicated to Poilievre because I don't like anything about him. And he looked to me to be totally gutted by this, as did the other leaders. And I remember seeing Mark Carney interviewed sometime, well, in the last year since he became prime minister. And the interviewer asked him, can you say 3 nice things about Pierre Poilievre? And of course I thought, no, you can't say anything nice about the guy. But he didn't skip a beat. He said, yes, he works really, really hard. He loves his family and he has nice hair, which, that greasy hair. But anyhow, but I think that was really evident with this because, again, the murder of children, if it doesn't gut you, that says something about you. But he looked, he rose to that occasion. And I feel that that's probably the pinnacle of his political career, at least as a human being, because I've never seen anything like that in him before that resembles empathy for other people. And I thought he really rose to the occasion. And I thought it was great that, Blanchette, that he was there. He spoke in English in the parliament, which he's never done.
You know what? Yeah. I loved that. And I loved that he said first too, I'm going to say this in English because some people in British Columbia don't speak French. Yeah. I thought that was so respectful. Yeah. I love that he went. I love that they all went. I really do. And I love that none of them took an opportunity to either participate in the culture war bullshit arguments that were being thrown out there, or to take an opportunity to take a shot at, the existing government. None of them. All of them were unflinchingly part of the same team when it mattered the most.
the human team. I thought what they did was very loving. And the other thing, just I'll say as well, in when they were making their speeches in the House, and Elizabeth May spoke last, and Bob Zimmer, who is the MP for that riding where Tumbler Ridge is, he's a real conservative, Poilievre conservative, so not particularly pleasant, but he or she said, I love Bob Zimmer. I love him. And I thought these people have these relationships. And I just thought, again, it was so human in that situation for people who are on very opposing ends of current political situation. So I thought they rose, like you say, I thought it was very Canadian. I thought it showed them to be good people.
Yes.
You know,
and when you say, you know, opposing political parts of the spectrum, you don't get more opposing than the Green Party, who is arguably the strongest against pipelines, and a conservative who can't say a sentence without using the word pipeline.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And they put that like completely aside. I thought it demonstrated incredible leadership in people that I usually criticize for leadership. I usually criticize Don Davies too. You know what?
He was really good. He was excellent as well.
Excellent. He was.
So I think they showed the moment. They showed what real leadership is, what compassion, humanity, you know, and the other guy that I thought was really good, and I wouldn't normally say this because I don't follow it a lot, and it's not so political, but was the deputy, I think he's the deputy superintendent of the RCMP, his first press conference that he did, where he actually answered questions. And then he was at the vigil and he spoke afterwards, not at the vigil, but to reporters. He did a really good job on behalf of RCMP after what happened in Nova Scotia, where there was no information for so long. So I feel like in this god awful, horrible tragedy that will have changed these people's lives, you know, that people, the systems worked in terms of our political empathy, the RCMP information. They didn't take the bait on the culture wars, like you say, or even the gun issue, that they just didn't care. They dealt with human beings. So again, very proud moment for Canada. And also I think for those families, you know, I don't have experience with crime myself. My grandmother was actually murdered when my mother was a child. And I think of the intergenerational impacts of that. And that's what these families will have to go through, will experience in whatever way they do. And hopefully this brings them some comfort. I hope.
You know what? That is such an important point. I hadn't thought about that. Actually, my great grandmother was also murdered in front of my grandfather, and that did like it was a really bad, I'm not going to get into it here, but it was a very bad situation that did affect my grandfather, and then it affected my uncles and my mother. So it is not just about the time that it takes to heal in this moment, about this situation. It's about the scars that the families and those around them are going to carry forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So well done to them, all of them.
Yes. Sure. And you know what? I don't give compliments to either Don Davies or Pierre Poilievre very often. I don't, especially Poilievre. But like I said, call it like I see it. And Mr. Poilievre demonstrated great leadership. Not only that, but he genuinely impressed me. It wasn't just that I didn't dislike him. I actually liked him in that moment. I would have bet against that before.
Yeah, I did. I felt he did the right thing and he was human. So, and then he went right back to the gym, and here we are.
The gym. So here we are. We've got, you know, the polls are coming out, and the Liberals are really squashing the Conservatives in the poll. And you got Carney making one of the biggest deals in history, and Poilievre's going to the gym. Let's talk about Carney's deal instead, because it is a big deal. It is a huge deal. And I believe that when we were hearing people concerned about the global agenda, the globalists and the globies and the World Economic Forum being evil, and so I think that they were afraid of this. I think that all of the messaging against globalists or a new world order or the World Economic Forum, I think that is because they could see this move, and it is very bad for the United States. It's a hegemony ending move. What Carney is doing. So why don't you explain what he's doing?
Yeah,
Since I've set it up so well.
Sure. Yeah. Like just as a bit of background, the way I frame it for myself is that when Trump first came in and he started these threats that, against our sovereignty, but also the tariffs, and everybody was running to the White House to have these kind of self-debasing meetings with him to make these deals. I'm not sure if they didn't. I can understand totally the economic risk if at the time the people thinking if we didn't do this, what would happen to their economy? And of course, economics and political stability are completely intertwined. And what we found out over time was that that didn't work for them. And Carney didn't do that. He went there, as we've all seen. He was nice to the man. He knew how to play him. I think Trump likes him from everything. I think they still talk through all these ups and downs, even though Trump's walked away from our trade negotiations at this point. So I think that world leaders are learning as we go along. And one of the things that I was thinking very early on is, yes, the United States economy is the biggest one in the world, but it's only 350 million people. And there's a whole other billions of people out there and other huge economies, China, India, and then the EU and the Trans-Pacific Partnership Group. There's a lot of, so collectively, they're bigger than the United States, obviously. And so now, and I think Carney saw that from day one, and he's been working, step by step by step to get Canada away from them and to work with these international partners to set up other trade groups. And this Trans-Pacific Partnership basically morphed out of a previous one that the United States was in, that they left in 2017 under Trump. And so his trade rep, or I'm not sure what he calls them, is meeting with that group and the EU to get them to go together on a trade deal, a low tariff or no tariff trade deal. And that's 1.5 billion people. And that's on top of all of the other deals that are being made with China. Carney's going to India, which is going to be huge for Canada because that whole nature of that relationship has changed. That group is it Mercado? Is that what they call it? Mercosur, sorry. So there's a whole this is basically the shift away from the United States. And what I hope is that, and what I think Carney knows, is that China being this huge market, this powerhouse, it is the E or green leader in the world by far. If you actually look at what they've done, in that, like, they are leaving countries like us in the dust with all of our little old fossil fuel technology. And not to minimize that, because it's huge for our economy, but what they're doing is unreal. And so I think Carney recognizes that everybody running to China isn't a good idea either for anything outside of economic advantages, that we need to have a more expansive trade relationship with other countries so that we don't end up becoming dependent on China like we did on the United States. I never understood that with the first trade agreement that Trudeau and Friedland made, the first free trade agreement with Trump. I remember thinking at the time, so now we're going to start divesting away from them, right? Because we have to, you can't trust them. And then the pandemic hit, and there were huge other priorities, but Carney knows this, and I do believe that he is the leader in this movement because he was the first one to voice it internationally that we can move away from this order and that it's dead. And at this Munich Security Conference, it was interesting. I paid a bit of attention to it through the Tumbler Ridge thing and everything else that I'm involved in, but is that they all of those European leaders were saying the same thing that Carney said in Davos, which is that the old world is dead. The Americans aren't trustworthy in effect, and we need to move on. And there's a whole other big world out there. So I think it's fantastic. It's great that he's being recognized for that. And I can only imagine in those inner circles of these high-level people what they must be discussing. So good for Carney. We elected the right man, boy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've talked about it many, many times, but Rob and I had a bet in like 2012 or 2013. We were in Ottawa and we were drinking and we were talking about how the hegemony, and we used to call it hegemony because we were saying it wrong. The hegemony in the United States wasn't likely to last. So we had a bet of who we thought the next one would be. I picked China. He picked Russia. Neither of us had considered, there was a third guy too, our buddy Don, he picked India. But none of us considered that the trade would be, okay, we're going to trade the American power, not for one other country, but for 40 countries.
Yeah.
And it's going to be more. I'm telling you, Francis, I am telling you, I believe strongly it's going to be more than 40. So right now, the news is that they're making a deal between the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was actually negotiated under Stephen Harper. It was signed under Trudeau in 2016, but it was negotiated. It started to be negotiated in 2012. So this goes way back. So Harper says, hey, was part of a group that said, hey, let's do this, 10 countries. And then the United States in 2017, Trump's like, nope, we're out. And actually, Hillary Clinton also didn't want to be part of it. At first, she kind of waffled on it. She said yes, but eventually she said she didn't want to be part of it either. So what Carney did is he's getting the 10 countries that are part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So that's Australia, New Zealand, Brunei, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, New Zealand, Peru, Mexico, Vietnam, and Singapore.
Yes.
And the reason I said Singapore last is I'm getting there. So those 10 countries with the EU, 27 countries, like Francis said, that's $1.5 million person base. China isn't even big. China's 1.4. So just the TPP and the EU together is 1.5. That's bigger to China. But I predict, and the reason I said Singapore is that Singapore is also part of a trading bloc, ASEAN, right? Pardon?
Mark Carney has made a trade deal with ASEAN as well. That's one of the deals that he's made.
Yeah, he was there last October.
Yeah, and I think we actually have a trade deal with ASEAN. It was the first official one that he made. So you start, like you say,
you put them together. So if ASEAN is part of this bloc, and the EU recently-ish had made a deal with the EU, remember? So we've got with ASEAN, EU's got with Mercosur, we've got with EU. If all of those trading blocks are together, we're never going to have to worry about one country trying to abuse its power again, because it's not going to be able to, because the sum of the parts is greater than one other country.
Yes. And I think the deterioration of the United States, like you say, that's been going on since Reagan, incrementally. And now we're at this kind of apex with Trump and his minions, and they're just destroying themselves from within. And there doesn't seem to be, and when you look at these Epstein files and the tie to Russia, if you really start reading about that, that speaks, again, aside from the sexual abuse of all those poor children and women, women, children.
They were girls then.
Another thing that's just so god awful. But if you look at the links that keep being exposed to Russia and the Russian influence over the United States, and how the destabilizing influence of where they are, it's destabilization on destabilization heaped on it's piling on itself.
Yep.
So other, trade relationships and strategic relationships are absolutely critical. And I think also what these countries are looking for is not just trade stability, but political stability. And countries like Singapore, Canada, even China, they're politically stable countries. Many in the EU are stable if they're not too threatened by their extreme right wing, like the Brits and I think the Germans. Hungary is not, no.
Well, Hungary has an election on April 12th, I think. And Marco Rubio had criticized Viktor Orban quite heavily in the past, but now it's a different day. And so Rubio spoke in Munich about how Hungary and the United States need each other. I don't know what the United States needs Hungary for, unless it is just like a, hey, you're on our side with this right-wing push. That's what I think it is.
And Russia, because Rubio is involved in all of that, as are all of those, many of those people in the cabinet. And so that's just another, now that this information is coming to light, of how connected they are and how manipulated the Americans have been by Russia or this American elite. it is actually really scary. So these other countries, like, we need to move on. And this is where Carney, I think his genius is, and his work ethic, that is moving us forward into that. And again, I'm not trying to be Pollyannish about it. It's a long road and a difficult road, but
Yes.
have the right person. And again, I think stable governments want to deal with stable governments, stable
Yep.
countries. And that's sort of more, this is what's evolving with this. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I guess the next big one for Canada will be whether we continue with Kuzma, not us, but whether.
So I think that the one of the biggest reasons that the Conservatives kept pushing, like you saw it, all the Conservative pundits, a lot of the Conservative MPs, Pierre Poilievre has said the date July 21st so many times with this bullshit of, well, Carney promised us that he would have a deal by July 21st. It's not what Carney said. You can't find a clip of Carney saying, you know what, I'm going to have a deal with this guy by July 21st. I think that Carney and a lot of the countries are like, I think they're stalling this guy. I think Carney's just being more obvious about it. Honestly, these other guys like South Korea apparently had negotiated a deal, and then I think last week or the week before, Trump on Truth Social is going to throw more tariffs at them because he wasn't happy with how long their legislature was taking. I think it's possible everybody's just stalling with this guy. So, okay, we'll play nice with this guy. Meanwhile, we're all going to talk to each other. We're all going to set up a new system so we don't have to worry about him anymore.
Exactly. And also, I don't know how much they're kind of counting on the fact that he is losing support in his own country. I don't think it matters. Trump, they don't care. They're in their bubble and he's insane. But if you look at the landscape, he is losing support. And I don't know if that emboldens some of these countries slightly to move on, because who knows what that's going to look like. And there's so many variables, but
I think that was the intention of Ford putting out the Reagan ad.
Yeah.
Right. And the billboards before that too. The Canadian government can recognize what the American government is doing to the American citizens as far as the information that's being put forward. And a lot of their support is dependent on having the wrong information. So I think that the Canadian government was I think those Reagan ads, I'm not a big Doug Ford fan. I'm with him. And I remember he did a press conference once.
Yeah.
And they said something about how Doug Ford, you said that those were the best ads, and he was just like, they were like super confident they were the best ads. They were fantastic ads. And I think that they were meant to chip away at the support. And when you see him talking too, when you see him changing his mind on the tariffs and everything too, that also emboldens other countries. And somebody else had admitted recently, somebody from the EU, and I can't remember who it was, but they said, I'm kind of surprised. I would have expected to see the countries kind of clamoring to see, who can get his attention and who can get into his good favor instead of doing what we're doing. And I'm super happy that we're all doing what we're doing.
Well, and that's because that's what they were doing when he first was elected, and they were all going to bend the knee in the Oval Office. And then they realized that he's not reliable. He's completely insane. And that they needed to start to do this. And I think it takes, as in anything else, leadership to actually voice that. And that's what Carney has done publicly. Now, I'm sure they've had all sorts of private conversations, but publicly, he was the first one really to say it to that degree. And I think, again, people learn as time goes on and behavior deteriorates with Trump, that we need to move on here, because this is not going to go anywhere. And what happens when he is no longer president and we're still dealing with that? Because MAGA is not going to go away. He will go away, but there's going to be, who knows how that's all going to morph.
JD Vance is next. I think that when you said you think that Trump likes Carney, I agree with you.
Yes.
But I think that it's more than just I think he respects him. And I don't think that Donald Trump respects many people, but I think Mark Carney has his respect. I really do. And I think that Trump recognizes how smart Carney is too, and how unrattled he is. I think that you can argue that most of the world's leaders are smarter than Donald Trump, if I'm honest with you. On the surface, I think that he's playing a con man's game, and I think a lot of it is an act. But I think that overall, you could make an argument that most of them are smarter than him, but they're not they're not as good as playing the game. He gets under their skin, and he doesn't get under Carney's skin. You
Yeah.
can see it. You can see it with when Carney's like, "Who cares? Hey, don't you have a better question than that?" And he doesn't, like, even when Besant came out, and then they asked Carney. Carney's like completely like unbothered, unruffled.
Because Carney is highly obviously intelligent, but I think he's got an enormous degree of emotional intelligence and self-confidence, and he knows what he's dealing with. And I think that he is not somebody who's dealing in the moment. Obviously, he's a strategic guy. And I think, like with this Kuzma, I actually, I mean, I don't know him, but I actually think he thinks that there's a good chance that this is not going to go forward. There's going to be very significant disruption to it, and or at least temporarily, maybe, if that's what Trump wants to do. And so he's just moving on. And I see commenters now in the media saying the same thing, that there's a, we need to plan for that, which what we thought 6 months ago was absolutely catastrophic for our economy and could never happen, could actually happen. And we need to position ourselves to move out of that. And that will come with a great deal of pain, as are the current tariffs for people who've lost their jobs. But we need to move forward. So Carney's just, I feel like he exudes this incredible emotional intelligence as well, and this confidence. And he's just that kind of a guy. And that's why he's not threatened by Donald Trump. Going to play
And
it.
he's making a lot more replacement deals. So like we're seeing this with the cars, right? Not just the 49,000 EVs coming from China. We're talking about the deals being made with South Korea to build cars here too. The American companies, we got this guy Trump. He comes into power, and then he's like, I'm going to use tariffs to get all the companies to move back to the United States so we can collect their tax money over here. We can make the money over here. We're just going to keep tariffing. We're going to impose economic harm until they come back to the United States. And even if they didn't start in the States, all the companies should be in the United States. So some of those car companies did go to the United States. So Carney's like, all right, you don't want to be here, then, see ya. Also Stellantis, that was going to be like, oh, we're going to go there. And Jolie handled it. And she took a lot of criticism for it, but they are adding the third shift, 1,700 jobs, which is fantastic, which the people who criticize Carney never bring up those kinds of wins. But I think that Trump also softened, maybe, depending on who you listen to. I think it's likely to be true that he is softening on the possibility of letting up on some of the steel tariffs. If you look at the steel
and aluminum as well, apparently.
Yeah, because those companies, they're like their shares are like, they're down, man. They're all down. They're all losing money. If the American businesses lose money, they're paying less tax money to the American government. There's less American jobs, less people happy with him. I think that the waiting game is brilliant, honestly. I think that the conservatives, like I said before, the conservative MPs were pushing for it. Pierre Poilievre was doing it. His influencer cheerleaders, all of them. Oh, Carney's failing. We should be at the table. We should be at the table. That Kate Harrison, she drives me up the wall every single time she's on Power Politics. All she's talking about is how we should be at the table. We should be at the table. If Carney was spending his time at a table that is signing a deal that the guy's not even going to honor anyways, it would be at the expense of talking to Singapore and talking, you know what I mean? And talking to the EU and making these other deals. I think it was sabotage. I think that, I think that they're just saying that because they must be able to see. How do you not see what this man's doing? They must be able to see what he's doing. And I actually remember there was a Pierre Poilievre interview when they said, how would you deal with Trump? And I can't find it anymore, but I swear I saw him say it. I would go into Kuzma from a position of strength, from diversification. That's exactly what he's doing. I think the longer you wait, the more the American companies hurt, the more he's willing to give up some of the stuff that he wanted. I think that the longer you wait too, the better along you're going to be with the other trading blocks, and you're going to go into those negotiations from a much stronger position. But now let's talk about the person that he put in charge of negotiation, Janice Charette.
Yeah. So what he's done is he's got a new Canadian ambassador to the U.S., Mark Wiseman, and then he's got a new trade lead, Janice Charette, who by all accounts is like a
It might be Charette. I might be saying it wrong.
okay, who is by all accounts a powerhouse superstar. She was the clerk of the Privy Council under Stephen Harper, under Trudeau. She's worked private and public sector over the last 40 years. She agreed to come back into this job. And what did somebody say the other day? I don't know if you put it on your video. Somebody did. I saw it, that they said, one of these Ottawa insiders said she has more power than 200 men in Washington, just by the force of her personality and her experience and how she deals with things. So what I've read is that the combo between Wiseman, who's a private sector guy and who knows business people. I mean, he was part of BlackRock. I think he was BlackRock, which is like, holy shit. And so he has that advantage, and she's got the public sector trade negotiating, dealing with bureaucrats kind of thing. And they say it's an incredible team that he's put together. And it's really interesting, Christy, because, whoa, sorry, I just dropped something. Yeah, that's okay. When he first became the prime minister, I remember all of these pundits were saying that he was too precise. He expected too much from people. He wasn't filling his senior level positions, like his clerk of the Privy Council, et cetera, and all of these criticisms. And he has done nothing but put super uber powerful, smart, accomplished people into these senior level positions. It's just been amazing what he's been able to do and who he's been able to attract. And so this team, the two of these two are probably the best positioned people that we will have to deal with this situation. So she sounds amazing. I had never heard of her before, but then who follows the clerk of the Privy Council, really?
Not me.
But yeah, so she sounds like she is, between the two of them, that they'll do really, really well. And I gather that before the, is it Karen Hillman, who was the last ambassador, that they always had two people in Washington, the actual ambassador and a trade rep. So Carney's gone back to that with these two very, very competent people. So, and it's good, I think, to have a refresher of people. That helps as well. So
Here's what I think. I absolutely love that she's a woman.
So do I.
Do. I think that, like, that's just another subtle play when you're dealing with somebody like Donald Trump. I remember when Hillman stepped down, I remember thinking, I hope she's replaced by a woman. And I think that, like, some of the Pierre cheerleaders were taking some shots at her, like, oh, this is who it is. I think they were taking some shots at her appearance or something. And the government insiders, the people who have actually worked with government, and conservatives, mostly conservatives, and like journalists who are used to politicians, they were like, you guys are just showing your ignorance.
Yep.
You have no idea, like, the fact that you didn't even look up who this person is before you're trying to slam her. Like, seriously, look at how accomplished she is. And I remember Dimitri Soudis, who was, I think he was Harper's guy. He was a communications guy for Harper, or pardon me, he was campaign manager, I believe, for Harper. He said, like, this woman can wipe up all the men up in Ottawa, that she has more IQ in the tip of her finger than all of them. Nobody with insider knowledge has said, oh, maybe this isn't a good choice. They have only praised the choice, including conservative MPs.
Yeah, and so did Lisa Raitt today on she's a real conservative partisan and Poilievre supporter, and she spoke really highly of Janice as well. So again, good choices as we go forward, and putting the best advantage possible for Canada with somebody who isn't stable and who's increasingly unstable, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I guess it's, do you have confidence in the government to do this or not? And for me, I do, with everything that he has done so far, with the, moving us away from the Americans, building setting up structures to build our own economy from within, all of those big, heavy lifting that takes time, and it takes strategy, it takes money, and it takes the right people to do this. And this is what he's doing. He's moving this huge beast forward, or I shouldn't say beast, but country forward. And so I think, well,
it is a beast, because it isn't just about our country. It's a movement. It is a movement of trading blocks, making deals with each other to avoid uh, letting the monster happen, which would be just one country with too much power, especially when you see somebody coming in and abusing that power.
Yeah.
Which honestly isn't fair to say about, because that sounds like Donald Trump is the only American president who's ever abused the American power, and that's just not true. I think it's probably most of them.
It's they all have to some degree. And again, like they say, empires last 250 years on average, and this is it for them. And it's unfortunate because again, they gave away their power by voting it away. They just voted away their power and their country and their democracy and their economy. Thankfully, I'm going to come back to the theme of my account. We didn't do that in Canada. We could have if we had elected Pierre Poilievre last year when Trudeau was still, or in 24 when Trudeau was still in power. And we didn't do that, thankfully. And I think out of all the things that I like about Mark Carney, that's probably at the top of my list, because we would be in the same situation as the Americans if we had not elected Mark Carney. And they just gave it away. They gave away their country to a shyster and a grifter and a psychopath, basically.
Yeah. So I might be giving Trudeau too much credit here. And if you think I am, please tell me.
Oh, I like Trudeau.
I think what he did by overstaying his welcome, and again, if you think I'm giving him too much credit, like maybe it was just ego, maybe it was just like, I'm not ready to go. I think it was strategic, because if you look at the long-term effects of what he did, he really did overstay his welcome, and he became so unpopular that it lent to Pierre's popularity, for the simple reason that he was the other guy. It had nothing, like not nothing. Some of his, like a lot of support for Pierre is for Pierre, but not all of it. Not all of it. When he was at the top of the polls, in the most popular that he was, that was not all support for him. It was a lot of support for him, but then the rest was just because he was the other guy that wasn't Trudeau. And I think if he did that on purpose, then I applaud him, because what it did was it caused Pierre to rise in the polls, so that Trudeau steps aside, Carney comes in, which honestly I called for like a year before it happened, except I didn't see Carney coming. I said it was going to be Freeland. I said this guy's going to hang on until the very, very, very end, until he possibly can't anymore, to become unpopular, and then she's going to swoop in and be popular, right? I was wrong, but it was Carney, which is way better than Freeland in my opinion. But what they did was, how many times do people bring up the lead that he blew, which he wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have been able to use, and the more popular he was, the bigger lead that he blew. It doesn't sound sound as impactful to say, oh yeah, Pierre, he blew a 5-point lead. But when you get to say that's the guy that blew a 20-point lead, it's something that carries over. Like I said, if it wasn't intentional, I'm giving him credit for something that he didn't think of. But I think it was intentional, and I think that was one of the reasons.
Yeah, I don't know if it was intentional. I think that it was, we're just really lucky it happened the way that it did. And I thank Chrystia Freeland for that too, for writing that letter. And here we are. And Poilievre cannot get back his numbers. He just can't, because the difference between Carney and Poilievre is so stark. And I feel like with Pierre Poilievre, it's almost like he's sinking right now more and more into a humiliation, almost like public humiliation with what he's doing. He had his little burst there with his leadership convention, but that really was not anything that was touted by too many people. It was, basically seen as a bit of a rigged.
Yeah.
And, in his favor.
Oh yeah, Paulie's here.
Hey,
Well, I just wanted to say, I had 2 cents about that, just a short little thing, that buying people to go to your convention to vote as a leader is just like buying people on TikTok, buying followers on TikTok. They mean nothing. It's not going to get you votes in the end. It doesn't mean anything.
What it does, what it does is that it lends to your marketing, right? So like people who buy followers, the amount of credit that you get for having more followers, I still think it's weird, because like your follower count is not indicative of what kind of creator you are. I don't believe. I think your follower count could be that you had one video that took off, right? it could be that, you know, you slowly built it up over time. It could be like from one video. I don't believe it's indicative of your credit, but the amount of people who give credit, well, you're a big creator, you must be telling the truth. What? Just because you have a lot of followers, but you know what I mean? That's a mentality of not of everybody, but of some. And so when you can get people to buy your message just because you have a big number behind your name, yeah, people buy it. And the same thing with this sort of, I'm going to pick and choose who's voting for me kind of thing. And I'm going to have the influencers there so that they can put it on social media of what a great time and how we're back, baby. And you know what I mean? And they're my hype guys, they're my cheerleaders.
Yeah.
And that sort of lends the idea to social media that their support is stronger. It all goes back to when you inflate the support, when you let the public believe that there is more support from when there is, it helps get other support. Other people are more likely to jump on board when they see other people on board. Then nobody wants to be the first, or nobody wants to be jumping on if there's only a couple of dozen, right?
Well, exactly. It's advertising. It's like advertising on
Totally.
or, you know, the popular account or the popular person or whatever. And I think with Poilievre, he just has not been able to regain where he was. And it's at this point, like I say, to me, when I see him, and I follow him, as you know, very closely because he scares me, is that it's now almost become an exercise in humiliation for him, because he's trying to, you know, he's got the Jamil Jivani thing that happened, which is a complete loss of control within his party, or he's supporting what Jamil Jivani did. And he can't say that because it's been a complete public flop for Jivani, like really badly, especially the Breitbart thing.
Am I there?
Are we here?
Am I here?
You're here now.
Okay.
Timu internet strikes again. Or did you get a phone call?
Was that mine or hers?
I don't
Yours.
know. Oh,
It was yours. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say he just doesn't look like he's got any leadership skills. And I did a video today because one of the things that strikes me about Pierre Poilievre, that I wonder for people who are conservative supporters who keep going on that he may be prime minister someday, and he's got such great ideas on affordability and he really has a strong message on that. And I'm like, but if you look at what he says, none of it has any validity. You know, nothing that he says about the economy is borne out by any reputable economists. His solutions that he puts forward are ridiculous. They're not things that a G7 economy could implement with any success. It's just, it looks bad. And then you lower yourself to doing these ridiculous physical fitness videos, or like today, standing in the House of Commons when he was asked about Jamil Jivani, and he's like, "No, I speak for the party. He speaks for himself."
I made a video about that.
I saw.
Way to do this.
Yeah. Well, he looked.
You know, with me.
Yeah,
I didn't say it. He said it.
Weak and sad, because he controls the Conservative Party of Canada. Is Pierre Poilievre's party. He controls that thing with an iron fist, and he controls the messaging of his people. They all say the same thing that he does.
Yes.
So this guy went rogue with either a risk that they were willing to take to see if it had any fruition, which it never would. It was never a good idea. Or Jivani is an egomaniac, and he thinks he might take a run for the leadership, or he wanted to leverage his friendship with JD Vance. And basically, it's come back to bite him in the end, as it should. Because
it's the Breitbart interview.
Yeah,
I believe that I made a video about this today. I believe that he didn't think that Canadians would hear it. Same thing when Danielle Smith went on Breitbart and talked about, hey, can you guys kind of quiet down about Trump because it's hurting Poilievre? Just like when Poilievre was on that Northern Exposure.
Oh, she did it again.
Yeah, I can't.
That's okay. She's frozen. I'm going to kick her. I'm just going to. Oh, no, she's back.
Sorry.
It's okay. You froze at a terrible time, like a really bad facial expression.
Oh, no. I'll probably see it later. Yay.
Well, and as somebody in the live here is commenting, I'm just looking at the comments as we're speaking. So sorry, my head's down. But
it's okay. I can't see the comments.
Yeah, somebody has rightly said as well that when Jamil Jivani spoke about this, and he basically insulted Canadians and gaslit us and said that we're having a hissy fit.
Hissy fit.
against the country that's threatening everything about us, including, us being the 51st state. He also
Yeah.
that term off the reservation. Now, I had never heard that before. And so right away, I was like, that can't be good. And I did some looking into it. I'm like, man, you are paid by the taxpayers of this country $209,800 a year, and you're going to get an $8,800 raise in April, plus your benefits, plus your pension, plus all of your expenses. And you use a racist term like that? Like,
Yeah.
I think these guys do that because they don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think they know that it's racist, but they don't actually think there's anything wrong with it.
They totally know.
You're paid by the taxpayers.
It's sending a signal. It's sending a signal to a certain base when you use a term like that. But another thing that he said too is he said that the deal with China was a mistake and that he wants to reverse it. What do you mean reverse it? Do you want to bring back the canola tariffs? Do you first of all, he lied to say that it was a one-way deal. Like that made it sound like we had nothing just because we're not selling them any cars. Doesn't matter. We're going to sell them canola and lobsters. So
and beef.
And beef. That's right. And beef. So he made it sound, he also said, and they're saying that we're on recession watch. Are you kidding me? We haven't had a negative quarter since the second quarter of 2025. That means that you in order to have a recession, you need 2 quarters in a row to be negative. Quarter one already is the experts are predicting it's going to be up. So if it's up, the earliest possible we could go into recession is at the end of the third quarter, which is over half a year away. And this guy's on Breitbart podcast going, we're in a really bad economic shape and we're on recession watch. Come on, no. And I want to reverse the China deal. What would that say to farmers in Saskatchewan or lobster fishermen on the East Coast? Come on.
Yeah, and also conservatives, since Pierre Poilievre became the leader, they have been touting this recession thing for years. Since 2022, it has been a real constant kind of conservative refrain that we're this close to a recession, and we're actually in a recession, when that's not correct. That's not been declared. So it's again one of their tropes. And I find the China thing hilarious because wasn't it the day that he was there that Trump did that whole Truth Social post about he was going to go meet with Xi Jinping and he's going to make this huge deal, and he talked about all the billions of dollars in trade deals and so it shows again a level of incompetence. I keep using that word in my videos because it's just so incompetent and tone deaf, and you're in a bubble of your own making, and that's where the conservatives have been. But now this guy in particular, do you think that Canadians are going to actually believe what you're saying? Even people who aren't that engaged in politics don't want to be insulted in this country about what's happening. Every single person I know feels some degree of stress about the United States and possibly happen. That's just normal given everything. Even people I know who don't follow politics, but they know that, and you're gaslighting people into this kind of thing, and I don't know. The whole thing is just, again, I saw the polls. What is it? 338 was saying his riding, which is a very conservative riding.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Liberal, because again, people don't like this, and you need to get out of that bubble for the $210,000 a year we pay you, plus. Get off your racist trope and start doing your job and support Canadians against the United States instead of this nonsense.
So did you see my video about what Pete Hoekstra had said about how there's a different English in Canada than the United States? So that was from the Elevate podcast. He's a right-wing podcaster. And I truly believe that Hoekstra means that Americans are easier to bullshit. I do. I think that when Giovanni's saying those comments, I think those comments probably played very well to the Breitbart audience in the United States. I think that it's making all even Ben Mulroney's saying this guy's no good. A lot of conservatives are slamming him. You got Pierre distancing himself. but like I said, I think that it probably played very well. I bet a bunch of Americans, I bet a bunch of MAGA just ate that up and had no reason to doubt the credit of that. And that's what I mean. I think that when because he said that it's that he didn't say that the words mean different things. He said that that the response to them is different, or the reaction to them is different or something, or they're understood differently. So that's why I think he means that Americans are easier to manipulate.
Well, clearly they are, because look who they elected as their president. I mean, they 77 million people in that country to vote for a convicted fraudster,
Yeah.
a rapist, a guy who can't do business in New York because he's frauded everybody and their mother there, someone who they've known has been on these Epstein files, that has credible allegations of child rape. I mean, they voted for him, and all of the crazy economic incompetence that he demonstrated in his first term, and they voted for him. And even worse than those 77 million, in my mind, are the 90 million who didn't bother to vote, because to them this must have been okay as well. So yes, I think they are playing to that audience, and that they have been completely brainwashed that this guy was going to do something for them, when it was clear in everything that he's done in his entire life that he doesn't care about ordinary people. He doesn't care about people of color. He doesn't care about women. He hates them, and immigrants. They elected him. So yeah, you're absolutely right. They got totally brainwashed by this guy, and they voted for him. And I think they're still, I mean, I guess we'll see what happens with these midterms, but
yeah, I hope they have the midterms, but I think too, another thing that happened in the States, I don't know if you saw the Stephen Colbert show, was supposed to have on James Tallarico.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And CBS said, no, we can't do that. Some kind of financial reasons, but they know why. They know why Trump doesn't want this guy on TV. So they put it on their YouTube, and it's going like super viral. Like as soon as you tell the internet, hey, somebody doesn't want you to see this, everybody wants to see it, right? As soon as you say to the internet, don't say this, everybody's going to say it more. And I think that what it really did was it's really demonstrating to a lot of people what he's doing with Fox News and CBS. And there's a lot of people in Canada saying, don't let why do we even broadcast it here? We shouldn't even broadcast it here, because it's clear what he's doing. Like, this is basically what Russia does with their state television.
These are all predictable patterns of authoritarianism and actions. I mean, this is just totally predictable. The thing that's different now, 2025 and 2026 now, is the internet. You know, in like the Nazi Germany and all those things that they keep comparing this situation to, you didn't have this level of information and this ability to get information. And that has all of the bad stuff around mis and disinformation. It's also incredibly powerful on the positive end. And this Tallarico interview is one. What was the 60 Minutes one that they refused to air recently? Oh, about sex in El Salvador, that they deported all of that horrible place, and that was on Canadian news and on the Canadian internet live. So I think that's powerful, and that's what these guys perhaps don't acknowledge, or they underestimate. And I actually don't think they care either. Trump has made billions and billions of dollars since he's become president, and that's really what he's there for. And however long he lives, his family will benefit from that. They don't care about it.
Yeah. I think that every Canadian should get out their letter writing pens and start writing to your MPs about, and Carney, about U.S.
Or send an email. It's 2026.
Okay, get out your typing fingers and send a letter telling them how displeased you are with USA buying all of our media. They're starting to buy the Canadian media.
It's now, and again, that was Harper, right? He allowed that, and that needs to be reversed. And I see that there's now a new news station that's been given approval by CRTC. I can't remember what it's called. Also, one of these extreme right-wing US based stations that's just been given approval to play in Canada. And I don't understand why they allow that. And again, I don't know enough about CRTC and how that all works, but I know that Mark Carney has talked about that. The influence of foreign media, all of that. But again,
Well, I think it's very ironic that the country that is criticizing the EU the most for what they're trying to do to protect digital spaces. Oh, the EU, they don't have any freedom of speech. Oh, they want to tell you how to think and stuff, are the ones who are refusing to air, like what it was, I think it was a few minutes with this guy, because they don't want him to be popular, because this guy, I bet this guy can flip Texas. Can you imagine?
That would be, well, he has to win his primary first because he's going up against Jasmine Crockett and a whole bunch of people. But it'd be great to get a Democrat in Texas. That would be awesome. But
I like Jasmine Crockett too. I really do.
So do I. But I think that, they've got however that goes down there.
Yep. I think he's got a better shot because of how religious he is.
And he's a white man.
And it's Texas.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm just my little Vancouver opinion.
Yeah. No, I think however they deal with themselves down there, fill their boots, do whatever you guys are going to do. I think that Canada, that we have the right guy at the helm here, and it's going to be interesting to see, because I think also too, what I see in the media here is they keep talking about things like the auto industry and this deal with China and EVs and blah, blah, blah. Well, he's already got deals going with South Korea potentially. I see that Flavio Volpe, who, for anybody who wants to follow, an interesting Canadian, he's the head of the, I think, the Canadian Auto Parts. And he's just put out a whole thing about there's a group of Canadian manufacturers that are going to make a Canadian EV, and they've put out a prototype already. It's all over social media. So we're going to have Canadian made, or primarily Canadian parts made EVs here. Like, this stuff is happening really, really, really quickly, and it's hard to keep up. And I see it on our mainstream media. I don't like that term, on just our regular media. And I follow that media because we do have some good media here. And some really good people who are commenting on this all the time. And it's like, it's hard to keep up because Carney's going at this breakneck speed. And
well, we're going through a paradigm shift right now. We are. Our world is changing. It isn't going to happen overnight, but it is going to happen very quickly. And people are usually good with change. So it's going to be kind of painful.
It's going to be painful, but I think people recognize in Canada it's going to be worth it. And also that we don't really have any other choice, because the other choice is capitulation to the United States. And the rest of the world is not going to capitulate to them. So we need to move on.
And the conservatives that just want us to bend the knee drives me nuts. It drives me nuts.
Yes. And because I think they don't have a vision or the intelligence to know that it can be done differently. And also I think some of them, and I think some of them are cheering for the United States. I really do. Say ideologically, they're with the United States. There's a lot of these right wingers in Canada who are ideologically with Trump and with MAGA. And
I think that's a church thing.
It's a church thing. And it's also a money thing, right? I think it's also about money, because these guys are all lining their pockets as well with this ideology. They're all getting rich off of it. And you look at, again, I know this is probably for another time, but like these Alberta separatists and all of that, like, this is ideology and money, man. And they're trying to, again, brainwash people into thinking that there's some benefit to them in this, and there isn't. And we saw that with Brexit. We've seen it with Trump. I mean, there's a whole bunch of examples of that. And
the Alberta separatists are telling people. Somebody put an audio recording on X about how the separatists were saying that Europe used to be one country before it divided into 22 countries in the 1800s. It's, come on. And then when they got challenged, do your own research. You do your research, man. You sound really not smart.
No, and your guest that you had last week, I think Michaela is her name. Was it last week?
Yes.
She was excellent. And she was what the issues are and the lies. And it was the same with Brexit. They lied to the Brits about what the benefits would be to them.
Same people, Steve Bannon, just saying.
Absolutely. And Nigel Farage, who's now the head of the Reform Party, that they say could be elected the prime minister if there was an election. And, and they had the quickest down Western economy ever in the history of these Western democracies after Brexit. And I just read some stuff today that they have not rebounded from that. They cannot rebound. It's so detrimental for their economy. And that is the same as what's going to happen in the United States, what is there. And I don't think they've seen the worst of it yet, because they've got another 3 years. And you know, and that will happen in Alberta if they follow this route as well. I don't think it'll go that way, but if they do, they will also. I don't know why people believe stuff that is just so obviously not true. But anyhow, that's
for another day too.
That's human beings. Yes, yes, yes.
Anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up for now. That was the fast. I knew it. I knew talking to you was gonna go by like that. I did.
Right. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
We
And
need-
thanks to everybody who's watching here. That's really nice that you joined us.
And all the gifts. Tons of
Oh,
gifts this time again.
Oh, nice. Thanks.
I can't see that. I can't see
I
any
know.
comments or any gifts or whatever. So I'm just going to say thank you to everybody. Thanks to Frances for joining us. Frances, you're welcome absolutely anytime. You know, we do this every Tuesday and Friday. So we will be back on Friday. By then, I will have news about the NDP leadership debate. The federal NDP leadership debate happens this Thursday. So I will take some notes and I'll have a lot to talk about on Friday when we're back at 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Eastern time. If there's anything you want to see us cover, just leave a comment on one of our TikToks or one of our YouTubes. Polly will get it and tell me to put it on the agenda. But until then, I'm Christy. That is Frances. Thank you again for joining us. And that's Polly. And we will be back on Friday. Thank you so much.
Have a good day tomorrow.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.